Hello and welcome back to the Lowdown, everybody, where today we are talking about the best possible signing your club could make in every possible price range. Coming up on today's show, hear about the Premier League star that Newcastle must sign.
Just his ability to latch onto through balls. He's so good in transition, and Newcastle are one of the best counter-attacking teams in England this season.
The creative maestro that could transform Man United. His closest comparison is to Eden Hazard. And why Arsenal should sign Victor Osimhen over Victor Gyokeres.
He's a more proven in-the-box striker.
Hello and welcome back to the Lowdown, everybody, and joining myself and Mikey McCubbin today, we've got El Sporting Director, Pete Smith, Senior Football Journalist at Sky Sports.
How's it going?
Welcome back, Pete. How are you?
Yeah, very good, yeah. So on these shows this season, I fixed the problems of Liverpool, haven't I? Man United, various other Premier League clubs.
The form is strong. As is the form of your beloved Millwall.
Yes.
What a turnaround.
We could be setting up. We could go to Wembley together, Dougie.
could.
Millwall Sunderland in the playoff final.
Hand in hand with El Sporting Director. What a
place
day
in
out that would be.
place in the Premier League at stake.
Oh,
Wow.
Massive. Don't tease me. I mean, we're guaranteed the playoffs, but you've still got a bit more work to do. Mikey, how are you? Are you okay?
Yeah, not bad, thanks. Not bad. Still slightly recovering from the Arsenal victory over Real Madrid midweek.
That's
I think
crazy.
I don't think I've screamed at a team that I don't support. I can't remember the last time I did that. It might have been Tim Cahill's volley for Australia at the 2014 World Cup. Honestly, I genuinely screamed when the second Declan Rice free kick went in. It was just
And you've got a bit of a hot take though. You prefer the first.
I think so, yeah. Oh, it's tough. The second one is obviously is so perfect, but I think aesthetically, but the first one I think is just hard. I think getting a ball round a wall and then back in is just I think it's so difficult.
Roberto Carlos was there, wasn't he? In the
He
stands,
literally
watching
was.
on,
Looks a
thinking,
bit grumpy. Doesn't
yeah, some swaz on that shot. Yeah. I know a bit about that.
Yeah, he does. Absolutely. What a performance from Arsenal. But today, guys, we're looking ahead to the summer transfer window and we're picking the best signing at every price range. So we've divided the price ranges up into 4 categories: 0 to 25 million, 25 million to 50 million pounds, 50 to 75, and 75 and beyond. Me and Mikey are going to suggest one transfer each with a destination for that player in each price bracket. And Pete, El Sporting Director, gets ultimate say. Mikey, let's kick off with your 0 to 25 million pounds. So you think the best deal that could be done this summer in that price range?
I've gone for a club who are, potentially going to be in the market for bargains this summer, and that's my beloved Man United. Now, lots of chat in the last few weeks about, United need to go out and sign, a Victor Osimhen, proven striker. My problem with that is that it doesn't feel that feasible still for United to do that. There are quite a few strikers on the market this summer, right? But Liverpool are probably going to be in the market for a centre-forward. Arsenal are most certainly going to be in the market for a centre-forward. Chelsea might be in the market for a centre-forward. Now, if you're Osimhen or if you're Gyokeres, or even if you're Ekitike or Benjamin Sesko, who are you going to actually choose Man United above those clubs? I know United still hold weight because of the name. I know they still hold weight because, there are tons of footballers who grew up supporting United around the world. But as a career choice right now, they are the least safe bet. Even if Amorim's side improves them next year, I think that it's still the least safe bet. So I think United might need to go for someone a bit cheaper, someone who's not going to be necessarily top of the list of the other elite clubs around Europe, and that's Jonathan David, who is out of contract this summer, has been, has very much, been keen on a step up in his career over the last couple of years. And I think is one of the most underrated strikers around. Now, he's not been in as great form this year as he was last year, but his Champions League record, amazing this term, scoring against Liverpool, Atletico Madrid, Real Madrid, Juventus in the group stage, Lille narrowly missing out on a place in the quarterfinals after such a great group stage. And in the league, he still has 14 goals in what has been a bit of a down season for him. He's still third in the Ligue 1 rankings. So this is a guy who just has a track record of scoring goals. Yes, there's been seasons where he scored 9 or 10 penalties, but generally speaking, he has a very consistent record. He basically has never dropped below double figures in a league season. Now, the one... I guess the one worry is, why hasn't a big club come in for him already? That's always going to be a worry, right? But To be honest, I don't. Where United stand right now, I just don't think they have the privilege of going for, one of the creme de la creme, to be honest. When we think about United this summer, they need to get a right wing back in. They need to get at least one more midfielder in. They may need to even get another attacking midfielder to play on the left side of those tens. Garnacho, his future, I think, is pretty up in the air, given that we're yet to see him consistently perform under Amorim. So there's a lot of surgery to do there, and to be honest, like a right wing back will cost money. They missed out on Kenda. He's going to Chelsea. Someone like Jeremy Frimpong potentially on the market this summer. Like there aren't that many right wing backs that United could choose from. So I think they're going to have to spend money there. Midfield, they will definitely have to spend money unless they dip into the Championship. So if they can get a cheap striker through, and he doesn't come that cheap because his wages, of course, are going to be higher as a result of being a free agent. Rumoured €10 million agent fees, which is what put clubs off in the past. But I think he's a much more well-rounded striker than Højlund. He is certainly a better striker as a goal scorer than Joshua Zirkzee. And he has lots of elements to his game. He's good at holding up the ball. He's hard-working off it. He's a decent finisher. In order for United to score more goals next year, there also has to be an improvement from the creators behind. And that basically means, Bruno Fernandes not doing all of the work. So I do think that with a more natural goal scorer in there and with investment elsewhere in the attack, that United, that goal scoring form will come. And I think Jonathan David at 26 years old is a great guy to come in and be the number one while Højlund develops his game.
We'd love to see him in the Prem. Me and Dougie talk about him regularly on the football show, don't we, on Sky Sports News. It's been a bit of a running joke, isn't it? But every time Lille were in action, we were saying he's the one to watch, and almost inevitably he'd get a goal, as you say, in those huge games against the Madrid sides or against Liverpool, which in that game he really wasn't in the match at all for long periods. They had to do a lot of defending. But when he had his one chance, he did take it. And, as you say, you see that and you compare it to the finishing of Højlund or Zirkzee. The question would be, are United next season going to be able to create the volume of chances to actually get him to score a significant number of goals? Because I think that's been a massive drawback with Højlund and Zirkzee. And the other caveat I would just chuck in is, can Man United risk signing another player with no Premier League experience? Because I think that's the problem with those two players. Zirkzee more than Højlund was. He scored goals in Serie A, looked very good for Bologna. He was the young player of the season that year, in the team of the season, I think, as well. So looking really good in a foreign league, and then comes to the Premier League and just doesn't seem to have the attributes required.
So are you suggesting that the recent links with Liam Delap are a more safe bet? Would you say than
well, I think
David?
Yeah, I think if you're an English striker who can score double figures in the Premier League, a young player, and doing that for Ipswich, a struggling side, inevitably people are going to start linking you with teams that need a striker. I mean, I still think that's probably one more step than Delap needs to make in his next move. It feels like he should be making one step before going to the pressure cooker of Man United. We've seen like Højlund again is probably that sort of player who, when United were originally looking to sign him, their initial target was Harry Kane and Højlund, and Harry Kane would be leading the line, Højlund would be learning off him. Thinking back to like how Rashford would have done with Ibrahimovic at that sort of time. So you have the main man who's done it all, can cope with it all and lead the line with real authority. And you've got this rough diamond who's coming through and get honed. Whereas Delap, it feels like that'd be quite a lot to put on his shoulders. I mean, he's done really well for 100%. Ipswich and made the most of his opportunities there. And I say double figures return is fantastic for his first real crack at the Prem. But maybe Man United are a mid-table team now. Maybe they are.
We are at the moment. Team. I mean, you look at the competition. For top four, like United want to be in that next year, and they have to. The United still have to take some calculated gambles in that sense. I think like Jonathan David, he's dropped off a little bit this year, but last year, his non-penalty expected goals per 90 were the same as Victor Osimhen. Yeah. Who's going to be 64 million pounds. So I think where United are at, they need to be really, really strategic about how they make up this squad. And Yeah, I'm just not sure they have the luxury to be like, yeah, Gyokeres, you're linking back up with Amorim. I just right now cannot see that happening.
Still a big commitment from Jonathan David, given how well he's played in the Champions League, as we talked about earlier, to go to a club like Man United, who, even if things go perfectly to plan next year, like, it's difficult to imagine them challenging for the Champions League, given the deficit of points they've already got.
If they win the Europa League and get into the Champions League, it
that
changes
is
the
a
picture,
way,
doesn't it?
obviously.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I struggle.
Do you think he'd more likely choose, say, like, if Inter put themselves on the table, Juve are supposedly interested as well? Could you see that happening?
I think that's way more likely. For both, Gyokeres, David, etc. I just don't see Man United being able to shop at the top table. And Gyokeres in particular, a relative late bloomer.
Oh, yeah.
Has only really delivered in the Portuguese league, which needs to be respected, but will surely be wanting to take that next step at a club that is contending for titles year on year, that is in the last 8 consistently at the Champions League. Man United just feel way off that, and Jonathan David would have to make a decision too. On the topic of players leaving for free, I don't think there's a better free signing this summer than Trent Alexander-Arnold going to Real Madrid. I think it's
a done deal already.
It is just an absolute tap-in to really suggest this. And, you look at where Real Madrid have shopped in the last few years. Since the Eden Hazard, Luka Jovic summer, they've really utilised that free market so effectively. Mbappe, Alaba, Rudiger, of course, as well. And yes, they're happy to pay a big signing-on bonus. But still, in terms of transfer fee and the wages that you could offer, particularly with Kylian Mbappe, like, his actual weekly wage is not actually particularly massive. They've actually managed to save money by using the power of their status and prestige to attract these players to run down their contracts and join them on a free. And Trent will leave. I know it's very painful for Liverpool fans right now, but he will leave as a Premier League legend, and he's only 26, just purely on the basis of, what he's won in terms of he'll have leave as a 2-time Premier League champion, a Champions League winner, etc., numerous cups, but also just that legacy of most Premier League assists ever by a defender. I think 5 more than any other Premier League defender, and the next is Andy Robertson, which suggests that Robertson could actually catch him if he stays around next year, if he's kept on. But between 2018 and 2022, so those 4 seasons, over 10 assists in 3 of those 4 years. Absolutely remarkable. And only recently have those creative numbers slightly dropped off, given the fact there's been a few more injury issues since the start of last season. But in terms of his expected assists, I think he's at 0.31, which is only 0.01 less than Florian Wirtz, who's one of the most exciting creative players in Europe. And this is in a season where most people are talking about Trent's role having changed, Liverpool not pushing him as further forward into those attacking areas that he was utilising under Klopp, but yet he's still operating at that sort of number. I think it's super, super impressive. There's only 3 defenders in Europe that have created more chances than him. And that's Caio Henrique, Hakimi, and David Raum. So even this year, where he is playing this more defensive role, as everyone keeps on talking about, I think he'll still be a massive, massive loss for Liverpool. And why I love this from a Real Madrid perspective is Dani Carvajal's been out since October with an ACL injury. And crucially, a lot of those minutes have been filled by Lucas Vazquez, who's been an amazing servant, but isn't the player to take Real Madrid forward, clearly coming towards the end of his career. Or Fede Valverde, and taking Fede Valverde out of midfield, who is a brilliant all-round footballer and, so much energy, so much quality, long-range goals, etc., and putting him at right back, that's a real loss from your engine room. And in a season when they've already lost Cruz, to take Valverde out so regularly as well, that's really affected the dynamic of the team. So I just think Trent is a pretty perfect addition there. And you look at the way Barcelona's attack has clicked this year. They're averaging 3 goals a game across the entire season. Real Madrid need to get their attacking numbers up, which is bonkers considering you look at their forward line and the quality they've got within it. But even more chance creation, better set pieces coming from Trent Alexander-Arnold. I think it's close to the perfect signing.
Now, can you imagine Mbappe running through onto those through balls that he delivers time and time again, or switching it to Vinicius Junior, as we know he can? You mentioned all his numbers in the Premier League. The reason he's leaving the Premier League, not as as an icon or as a Premier League legend, you called him, it's not necessarily just because of the numbers. It's the way he did it. The way he's gone about it. It's like we've never seen any player play it right back like this before. I was at the game against West Ham earlier in the season. I don't remember when he played that pass to Salah down the line, just like the swaz, as Jamie Redknapp might say on it. Just the way he whipped that pass through and the sort of the curl he got on it to feed it through for Salah to run onto. And it's just that style, isn't it? That panache, which that just goes hand in hand with Real Madrid and the Galactico ethos and this idea of it being all a big show. To have a right back playing like that for you. And to bring him in for free is, absolute bargain. But talked about the pull of Man United. The fact that Real Madrid can sit and wait for these players, can sit and wait for Mbappe, can sit and wait for Trent Alexander-Arnold to get to that point. There is the little caveat: they might have to pay a little bit of money if they want him in the Club World Cup.
This is true.
The point of when Trent's contract expires is halfway through the group phase, I think, of that competition. And obviously, if they want their marquee summer signing to be on show in America, they might have to give, Liverpool 5 million, 10 million maybe, just to get that deal over the line a few weeks earlier.
There's a lot of cash at stake with the Club World Cup as well. I think the winner gets over £90 million,
That's right, yeah.
which is absolutely bonkers. Yeah. They're really, flooding it with cash to try and make up for the fact that it's at the end of a long season when most players, I think, are pretty desperate for a break.
It's a funny one. I was just thinking, I think this might be, Trent's going to be the biggest superstar Madrid have had at full back in terms of attacking threat since Marcelo. Yeah. It is kind of mad to think that, and we've been so used to for so long, that kind of forward line taking on a lot of the creative burden. So it will be fascinating to see. And it's funny that both KDB and Trent, leaving the Prem, because I feel like in the same summer, because I feel like in many ways they are the two defining creative players of this era of the Premier League. There was that season where I think Trent was basically doing everything that KDB was doing, but just from right back. He was taking up the same positions, putting in the same number of crosses from the same kind of areas. Remarkable footballer.
Pete, you've got to make a decision, I'm afraid.
Oh well, Trent is sorry.
I'm
a big fan of David, but Trent.
Maybe I slightly cheated there. Let's see. Okay, Mikey, you're 1-0 down. So in your 25 to 50 million pound category, this is where I think it gets more interesting. Who's your best bargain buy that you could see happening this summer?
Yeah, this is an interesting one. I think there's a lot of choice here, right? I really ummed and ahed over this because I think this is the price bracket at which, it sounds obvious, but at which most transfers are going to be done this year. Even lower towards the 25 to 30 million pound mark, because clubs just don't have, the Premier League clubs at least are limited by PSR regulations. And this is the kind of price bracket that most clubs are going to be working with for their top targets. Now, I was thinking about Mark Gehi at Crystal Palace. Looks like, for up to £50 million, he will be gettable this summer. I was also thinking about Frenkie de Jong with 1 year remaining on his contract at Barcelona. I think that there could be a number of Premier League clubs who should be looking at him this summer. Also considered Mike Maignan. Obviously been linked with Chelsea. I think he'd be amazing, but looks like he's going to sign a new contract at AC Milan, which suggests he's just going to be off the table, despite Milan being an absolute bit of a circus on the field this year. So I have gone for Bryan Mbeumo to Newcastle. Now I think 1 year left on his contract. Brentford do have the opportunity to extend that by an extra year. But either way, this is the last year that they can get significant money from Mbeumo, and I think now is the time to sell for Brentford. I think they can gain a lot from that. I don't think that they will ever get more than 50 million for Mbeumo. I'm not even sure that they would get quite as much as 50 million this summer. I feel like if Newcastle were to negotiate with them, they could get them down a little bit. And I think Brentford, as long as they keep hold of Thomas Frank, I think can evolve from Mbeumo like they did with Ivan Toney over the last 2 years. Igor Thiago, hopefully with a full pre-season behind him, will be ready to take up that mantle and lead the attack alongside Johan Wissa. Someone like Mikael Damsgaard coming on well this season. I think he's only going to take on more responsibility too. And they're great at signing players as well, Brentford. I think Mbeumo for up to £50 million would be a great sale for them. And Newcastle, as we know, they have been bereft of right wing.
Man, respect Jacob.
I do respect him, but they haven't signed a right winger since Almiron. Let's face it, unless I'm forgetting someone really obvious. They need investment there still. Jacob Murphy has had an amazing season. In fact, funnily enough, I would say Jacob Murphy has had a better season than Bryan Mbeumo, despite Bryan Mbeumo being fifth top scorer in the Premier League. The way that he's adapted, his goal and assist numbers obviously great, and his underlying numbers amazing as well.
Two great options to have as well, because Murphy can go on the outside so effectively.
Well, exactly, and this is my thinking, is that I don't think that signing Bryan Mbeumo means that Jacob Murphy is suddenly going to be out of the picture next season. I think that I think that Murphy is very deserving of retaining minutes in the Premier League. But, Premier League teams need to have depth. Jacob Murphy can't just do it on his own next season. And Bryan Mbeumo, if he comes in, I think by default would be first choice, but also he would play as backup to Alexander Isak. He could even, if Eddie Howe needed to because of injuries, could even play in a front two with Isak. So that gives you options there. Callum Wilson, I don't think you can have him as the backup to Isak for another season. And Mbeumo, you're getting a right winger and you're getting a forward in one there for the price. I just think he'd be so suited to the Eddie Howe style of play. I think only Harvey Barnes picks up more progressive passes than Mbeumo in the Newcastle squad. Just his ability to latch onto through balls. He's so good in transition, and Newcastle are one of the best counter-attacking teams in England this season. I think they rank 5th in the league for fast break shots. Yeah. So shots that you get off on the break. And Mbeumo's so suited to that. I would love to see him in Newcastle.
Like you mentioned Mark Gahey as well. He was obviously linked with Newcastle last summer, wasn't he? And they couldn't quite get to the right figure on that one with Crystal Palace. I think it's going to be a big summer for Newcastle. Everyone I speak to around that club, the indications are that they're going to spend. They're finally freed of PSR shackles, and coming off the Carabao Cup and potentially getting into the Champions League again. Especially if they get in the Champions League again, I think we'll see significant moves from Newcastle. And the way you described that absolutely makes sense. The last time they were in the Champions League, by Christmas time, January, they were on their knees because they played the same team over and over again. And that Eddie Howe, like we saw in the cup final, Eddie Howe, when he gets his Newcastle team, high energy, flying forwards, and also completely committed in defence. They're such a formidable team, can beat anyone, can beat the best team in the country. We've seen this season in Liverpool quite comfortably in that Wembley final. And Mbeumo, I think it's great schooling for him at Brentford, if that's not too disrespectful. But playing that way at Brentford, it's, as you say, it's a transition into playing for Newcastle. Callum Wilson, you're probably right, he's a fantastic player. I've loved watching him, but just tipping over now, isn't he, in terms of his injuries?
He's had so many injuries over the years, and he's 33. What
it's
can
natural,
you do?
Isn't it? It's natural, right? And Mbeumo, it'd be great to see him, because I love the way he's stepped up since Tony's gone. Him and Wissa have been really good for Brentford. They've made what could have been a very painful situation for Brentford and their supporters with Tony leaving almost seamless, really. I mean, we don't really talk about Brentford and missing Ivan Toney because those two have stepped up so well.
They've been magnificent. I also like the idea of Livramento overlapping a little bit more than we've seen necessarily with Murphy. I think he's been really solid, but maybe not the attacking force that we were used to seeing at Southampton. Maybe that's slightly injury related, etc. So I'm up against it. I think after that pitch, that was a great one. I'm going to suggest a player that you will see in action tonight if all goes well, and this video comes out on Thursday night. We're filming this on a Wednesday, and there's always a slight risk when you suggest a player that's about to have a huge game, not least because I've done this before. English sides have played some players in Europe this season, like Kubo, I was really bigging up before Man United played Real Sociedad, didn't really do much. Ben Seguir earlier this year when Monaco played Arsenal, I remember doing a piece on him. That didn't really go too well either.
The Dougie curse.
The Dougie curse, it lives on. But Rayan Cherki tonight,
Lyon
versus Man United.
Wow.
He's having a phenomenal season, and he's had a great particularly last 18 months or so. He's now on 9 goals and 18 assists in all competitions. He's on 9 assists in Ligue 1. That's only topped by 8 players in the entirety of Europe. And if you look underneath the hood at his underlying numbers, his expected assists, so the quality of chance that he creates in terms of getting players into the best position to score, is the best per 90 in the entirety of Europe, ahead of Kevin De Bruyne. 0.47. Absolutely remarkable. And in terms of shot creating actions, so either the shot or the pass that leads to the shot, he's 3rd in Europe behind Kevin Stoger, who is this sort of free kick set-piece maestro over in the Bundesliga, and Kingsley Coman, who plays a lot of minutes from the bench for Bayern Munich, so has the advantage of playing against tired legs. But Rayan Cherki, for years, I mean, he made his debut in, I think it was 2019 now, and he's still just 22. He was talked about as the next thing coming out of French football. I think I've already talked about him on the Lowdown for a move to Ipswich, which has really not aged very well whatsoever. He's got to have bigger expectations than that. But he is, I think, only got 1 year left on his contract. Lyon are reportedly in 500 million euros worth of debt. They have a provisional relegation to Ligue 2 already secured. And this guy was linked with Dortmund in January. He was linked to Bayern Munich in January, who were also considering a move for him. So I think this is going to be a difficult one to pull off. But given the fact that he is very young and relatively cheap and won't be playing, hasn't got that much Champions League experience except for that 2019-20 campaign, I wonder whether Man United could get their hands on him and he could be a player to really unlock that forward line next year. He can play on the right-hand side. He can play as a 10. He can even play on the left-hand side, but he's really a 10 or on the right-hand side. And Amad Diallo does play there. But I think you need better depth in that position for sure. And then if you're looking at Mount and Bruno and a new central midfielder to go with Agate and Mainoo in central midfield, suddenly you're just a little bit more excited about Man United going forward. And Cherki would inject so much energy. His eye for a pass is magnificent. There are... His closest comparison, is what people always say, is to Eden Hazard in terms of how he makes things happen. He's very comfortable dribbling at high speeds, and he's a very good progressive passer as well. So he's completed more progressive passes this year, despite playing further forward than Caicedo, than Rice, than Jude Bellingham, than Alexis McAllister. So Man United, who often look very stodgy and slow in possession, suddenly you've got a player further forward that can pick an eye of a needle pass, and someone like Rasmus Højlund, who has so suffered from a lack of creativity and service behind him, suddenly has someone who is capable of regularly picking him out. I think Rayan Cherki to Man United, if they can get this done for around 30 to 40 million pounds, I think this unlocks an entire side.
He lit it up against the under-21s, the England
He did.
under-21s, didn't he? He absolutely starred. But when you look at that French national team, whether it's the seniors or the under-21s, it's absolutely stacked with talent. And he, as you say, he's one of the... It was the big hope, wasn't he? He was going to be one of the superstars to join those ranks.
Also, something I found out this week that I didn't know.
Yeah.
I was speaking to a French journalist on Monday who wanted to speak to me randomly about what English people thought about Cherki. So that's why he was on my mind.
Yeah.
But he told me, which I didn't realise, that Cherki nearly signed for Man United as a boy when he was in the Lyon academy. Man United were looking at him then. So complete the circle.
Wow, that is interesting, isn't it? Dougie, tell me about his reputation and his personality. Because you've said about a lot of good footballing stats.
Yeah.
But there's a little bit more to the story, isn't there?
I think there is maybe a little bit more. I think he hasn't always necessarily seen eye to eye with his coaches. He's definitely got that sort of maverick demeanour and playing style to him, which will frustrate some coaches. But I think actually, similarly to where Ousmane Dembele's game has seemingly clicked this year, he's being a lot more sensible with his play this year. You know, when it's like, I've never actually been this player, but if you're the most talented on the playground, like you kind of try on a few too many tricks and flicks.
Right.
I mean, that's really not my game.
Yeah.
You're a really solid right back.
I'm an engine
incredibly.
guy. I'm an engine
Yeah,
guy.
you
There's
really
no
are.
ball playing ability
And
whatsoever.
you've also got a rocket of a
Oh,
right
Yeah,
foot
I
as
do.
well.
I can hit the ball quite hard. But anyway, we're getting sidetracked. This is about Rayan Cherki, who is, just a little bit more, has been more wasteful in the past and not necessarily maybe played to the team as well as he could have, which Amorim wouldn't like. But then at the same time, I think there's a lot of Man United players right now who do play very safe in this system. And it's a hot topic after the Manchester derby, isn't it, at the weekend? Rayan Cherki adds excitement, energy, ingenuity.
Is it lazy to compare him to Anthony?
Anthony is so slight compared to Cherki. Cherki carries a lot more weight to him and does have an explosive ability to beat a man as well, which Anthony never really had, I thought. But then, Anthony's performances for Real Betis have been really, really impressive. So there's maybe a slight similarity there, but I think he's got more vision than Anthony. Anthony's best things at Ajax, at least in my opinion, were shooting from range. And once people worked out that his trick was getting the ball on his left foot and trying to curl it, there wasn't really much to his game.
Yeah. Or spinning round and round and round.
Also, all the spinning, the loops.
Greatest trick in football history. I mean, I'd have the same concerns, right? Like, I think Rayan Cherki, has been an absolute star. He's looked like a superstar since he was 17 years old. Like, he's looked like he's got whatever it is, that a superstar footballer needs. My same concerns would be do his frustrations away from the field and training, etc. His record with coaches, that would worry me a little bit in a United team that is trying to recover from years of the dressing room being a bit all over the place. And is that something that Ruben Amorim, is that just another headache for Ruben Amorim to deal with? The upside, I think he would really have to hit the ground running in the Premier League for that to be negated, if you know what I mean. Like, he'd have to almost become United's talisman instantly, and that's a lot of pressure for him.
Whereas I think Mbeumo, you're locked in, you know exactly what you're going to get from him.
Already made.
With your money. Yeah.
1-1.
Yeah, I
1-1.
don't spend my money just riskily on
Fair
Mavericks.
enough. Looking after the pennies. Okay, 1-1. I'm going to go next, and this is in the 50 to 75 million pound category.
We're getting serious now.
This is getting serious. Exactly. Blow the cobwebs out of your wallet. We're done. Right. Out of nowhere, Inter Milan's squad have got really old. Really, really old. The average age of their squad is 29.1. It is the second oldest in Europe's top 5 leagues behind Rayo Vallecano. And you look at Cherki is 37, Jan Sommer's 36, Mkhitaryan's 36, Darmian's 35, De Vrij's 33, Taremi's 32, Çalhanoğlu's 31. Where has the time gone? And these guys have been amazing servants to Inter Milan. I think there will be some changes naturally this summer anyway. Some of those guys are out of contract. Mkhitaryan has been a brilliant pickup from Inter Milan after a guy whose career didn't quite catch a light over in the Premier League, but fair play to what he's been able to repeat and deliver over in Serie A, which is a league that's always suited him very well. But he's only got 1 year remaining on his contract, and he's their third most used player behind Jan Sommer and Lautaro Martinez. So I'm basically looking at injecting some energy and quality into an Inter Milan side that need a bit of a refresh, as good as they've been. And Inter, for a long time, haven't been able to spend very much money because of the rampant spending of the Antonio Conte days and Simone Inzaghi's record, given the fact that he's lost Skriniar and Brozovic and Lukaku and Hakimi and Dzeko and players like that, people that were crucial under the Antonio Conte era, and still replicating success year on year is really, really impressive. I don't know whether this is particularly feasible because they have had to be tight financially, but you'd imagine if Inter go deep in the Champions League again this year, win, their third title in the last 5-6 years, hopefully they've got a little bit of a kitty. And I think a player that I'd really love to see take a move to Inter Milan is Arda Güler. I think he'd be a brilliant addition in the centre of the park to play alongside Çalhanoğlu, Barella and Güler behind Lautaro Martinez and Marcus Thuram, because I really like Arda Güler, and maybe Real Madrid would only be able to consider loaning him. But if Inter Milan offered £50 million plus to 75 this summer for Arda Güler, I don't think there's a way that Real Madrid turn that down, given how little they've used him this year. You know, he's missed 29 games with injury last year. This season, he's gone 3 goals and 7 assists, and you'd think, he must be a fair regular. He's only been given just over 700 league minutes. He's 18th in Real Madrid's squad for minutes, and Real Madrid have, in the past, been willing to either loan players out or sell players that they just don't see quite making the grade. And given the fact that Trent is arriving at Real Madrid, Fede Valverde moving back into midfield, that's another kind of place gone. Fede Valverde never gets injured. Brahim Diaz is still there as that backup right winger. I can't imagine a scenario where Rodrigo is leaving this summer, given how well he's played this year in patches and how crucial he is to that whole operation. And whether it's Ancelotti or Ancelotti's replacement, I don't think you want Rodrigo to leave in your first summer, given how sort of important he's been. And he hasn't played a single minute of their last 4 Champions League games, Arda Güler. And I think he's got the talent and quality to really up the creativity levels of an Inter Milan side that have slightly lacked a little bit of spark at sometimes in the league in particular this year as well. And they loaned out Brahim Diaz for 3 years to Milan, came back and is now a semi-regular, more important player than Arda Güler. So maybe they'd be open to loaning him. But I just think Arda Güler, if Inter Milan or a club like that offered over £50 million to Arda Güler, a player they signed for, it's about £20 million. It looks like a real bargain now. I think they'd be silly to turn it down.
Yeah, I think you're right. The other thing is, surely Real Madrid will sign some attacker. I know we talked about Trent already this as their marquee signing, but does the summer go by when Real Madrid don't bring in some sort of attacking player? And that obviously increases the competition for him as well, doesn't it? So, yeah, I think it's a shame that we're not seeing more of him, because he's obviously a special talent. You see that whenever he plays for Turkey, and he's adored by their supporters and seen as, a fantastic talent for them who's going to deliver big moments for them on the international stage.
Mugged off by Szoboszlai, putting out his league
I know,
minutes
that
on his
was
Instagram
tasty.
post. Wow.
That was tasty, wasn't
Dominic
it?
Szoboszlai,
Yeah.
and who scored?
Who knew?
Just checking out the minutes played.
Most embarrassing moment of the season.
So from like a player technical quality potential point of view, get him in. Marketing point of view, absolutely get him in. I think he takes a lot of spots. Yeah, if he could get a whole season's run in Serie A, as you talked about, like Mkhitaryan, someone like that who's blossomed there, you could see him doing the same, couldn't you?
I could see 15 assists in all competitions for
Yeah,
Arda Güler
yeah.
if he gets 40 games. I do think he's that talented.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Nice, yeah. I really like that. I like how that's kind of come from nowhere as well. That Gula shout. Yeah. I've gone a bit more safe, but I just think this is a deal that needs to be addressed on this show. And we've spoken a lot about Arsenal and the attack this over the last 2-3 months. And I think the last time we were suggesting players for Arsenal, I was talking a lot about Nico Williams. He does fit into this bracket just because I think he would cost £51 million, including taxes. But I think, in the last couple of months, it's become apparent that, more apparent that centre-forward really is the priority for Arsenal, right? Like, I think the left-wing
Have you
position...
been watching Mikel Marino?
Scoring against Real Madrid? To be fair, after the Tuesday night performance, it is getting harder and harder to shift him out of that position. Had Rudiger on toast. But yeah, I mean... But this was the thing, right? Marino, amazing, such a well-taken goal against Real Madrid.
Yeah.
But there were 2 moments in that first half where, with a proper centre-forward, Arsenal are 2-0 up. And I just think that if there's one criticism of Mikel Arteta over the last 2 seasons, is that, like, he's... Well, and, Arsenal's transfer policy, I guess, and their strategy over the last 2 years is that, like they did miss a trick, I think, in getting a top centre forward in, because I know Mikel Arteta likes the team to be, I know he's got a bit of a total football kind of ethos to himself. He likes the strikers to drop deep and to help out in different areas and in that kind of false nine mould. But I just think that the performances of Ødegaard and Saka over the last few years, like, they do so much work in terms of ball retention, in terms of ball progression, in terms of creating chances, that I just don't think Arsenal centre forward necessarily needs to do that anymore. And even this season, in a down year for Ødegaard, him and Saka are still putting up 5 chances a game together. Declan Rice is putting up nearly 2 chances a game, which is pretty mad. And so I think, Victor Osimhen is the guy.
Oh.
I really think he's the guy. I think, there's a lot of chat as well about Gyokeres. There's going to be, until the summer, there's going to, I'm sure Benjamin Sesko's going to enter the fray again.
Why do you prefer Osimhen to Gyokeres?
I think Osimhen is just I think he's a more proven in-the-box striker. And I honestly just think Arsenal, like, they need to strike now. The Premier League is at, like you were saying, we're coming to the end of an era. The Premier League, the quality at the top of the Premier League has not been as low as this probably since 2016, 2017.
Pre-Pep and Klopp.
Now's the time for Arsenal to strike. It should have been this year, and Arsenal just they just never got the consistency required. But I think with Osimhen in that team, it just makes such a big difference. If you have Saka and Ødegaard fit for the whole of next season, that box is getting peppered with chances. And I mentioned Declan Rice, 1.9 chances per game he's creating this season. In Osimhen's in that 2022-23 season at Napoli, when Osimhen scored 26 goals and they won their first Scudetto since 1990, Kvicha was only creating 1.9 chances per game. Like this is a guy who, if you supply him, he will score. I know he's had this year at Galatasaray where he has scored a lot, but of course, in a league with less stature than Serie A. But I just think if there's a safer bet out there for just getting goals, then Osimhen is the guy. I love Gyokeres, but I don't know. And I see people's arguments about he would make them better in transition, etc., etc. But to be honest, I just think Arsenal next year will be back. Like, I do think they'll be back. I think, we've asked a lot of questions about Arteta's tactical setup this year and Arsenal's slow play, but I just see them stepping it up. I think another pre-season, and I can see them getting back to 2022-23 levels. I think I do feel like Arteta will move them in that direction if they can go on. If they can carry this run on in the Champions League as well. I just think the confidence around the club will be so much, and if you just add in a world-class goal scorer, because that's what he is. His movement in the box is so good, and also, even though he's not like Gyokeres in terms of he's going to pick up the ball super deep and run at defenders, you don't need that in this Arsenal team as much because you've got so much ball progression in that midfield. And second of all, his hold-up play is amazing anyway. So he can do that when called upon. And I just think, like on the break, like Arsenal will be, amazing with Osimhen in that side. Martinelli, we've seen improved performances from him over the last couple of months. And if they do get another left winger in, if they're willing to spend £100 million on Osimhen, or £110 million say on Osimhen and Nico Williams, then suddenly like that forward line is just looking really, really tasty. I just think you have to do it. Like £64 million for one of the best strikers in the world, the opportunity doesn't come around that often.
Interesting to see what Berta's take is as the new sporting director, whether he's someone who's going to...
He loves spending big money on strikers.
Yeah, João Felix.
He loves it.
João Felix, he sent a bit of money after him, didn't he?
Yeah.
You sort of just brushed over quite quickly that he scored 20-odd goals for Galatasaray. I think that's actually to his credit, isn't it? That he's obviously not got the move that he thought he might be getting after Napoli, and he's gone to Galatasaray, but he's kept on it. And I think that's, it would have been quite easy for him to maybe just like foot off the gas a little bit, think that I've achieved big things with Napoli and not got my way, and sort of started thinking about other things, a Saudi move or something like that. That was talked about, wasn't it, as well? Well, I think the fact that he's kept on it at Galatasaray keeps him in the picture for a move like that. I was thinking he was more of maybe a Chelsea connection, but but whether it's him or someone else, it feels like Arsenal will have to go down that road of a as you say, a box finisher, just to silence those critics a little bit. But those critics have been harsh, I think, on Arsenal at times. You think about the injuries to Odegaard and Saka, and now Gabriel, and the suspensions they've had for Saliba for like the Liverpool game and things like that. There's been moments in this season where it's almost been out of their hands a little bit in terms of how they've been sort of handicapped in certain situations. And I think you're right. After a pre-season, they'll come back really strong, be a major contender next year. But it's going to be a big reset in the summer. There's going to be lots of clubs investing. We talked about Newcastle being freed up by PSR. Expect Chelsea. Assuming Chelsea get into the Champions League, they'll be spending money again, and expect to be stronger than they have been this season and sustain what they were doing in the first half of the season. Obviously, Man United aren't going to settle for where they are, whether they can spend or not. Man City will definitely be back at another level than what they've been. So it's going to be fiercely competitive at the top. And as you say, I think perhaps this could be the final chance for Arsenal to get there before it gets really crowded again at the top end. But I guess has that really been the ultimate missing piece, that box finisher? I think there's moments like when they beat Man City 5-1 where you think, do they really need it? When Havertz is clicking and it's all synced up and it's all looking good. But then there are other moments, and you're right about that first half against Real Madrid, because there were a couple of low Saka crosses. Mourinho just wasn't there, and that's not his game. It's not his instinct to be there. Where Osimhen would have been there to finish that.
And you also think about the depth that they could have in that squad, right? If they bring in Osimhen, or if they bring in another striker. But I think in terms of like what he offers compared to like Havertz, say if you're having Havertz as the backup to him. Like you can completely change game plans between the two. And Havertz's like expected goals numbers this year have been great. Like he's averaging an expected goal every 2 games, which is really good numbers for a centre forward. But like he just isn't. Yeah. He isn't a natural finisher. So it's not like he's not getting into good places. Yeah. Osimhen gets into those places as well, but is just has such a range of finishing to him that he just steps it up a notch. Then you have Marino who can revert back to midfield. If they bring in Zubimendi, then suddenly that midfield, I know Partey and Jorginho probably leaving this summer, but the quality of depth in that midfield is just brilliant as well. And I just think, especially with Zubimendi picking out Osimhen from deep, Declan Rice picking him out from deep, I just think that would be, match made in heaven.
Very good.
I like it. I like it a lot. Right, Pete, I think
this might be the toughest one.
Arda Milan or Victor Osimhen to Arsenal.
Yeah.
I think I'm up against it.
Do you think you are?
Yeah.
I quite like the Gudo shout, but I'm not sure it's actually going to happen.
Yeah. You can bring realism into it.
Yeah, Osimhen, again, I always thought he would be sort of more Chelsea bound.
But do you think? I think if you were Osimhen and you had them both on the table,
awesome.
I'd just go for Arsenal.
Absolutely.
I just think there's such a better feeling around there at the moment. Like, who would I rather have supplying me? Like, I guess Cole Palmer is a great creator as well. Yeah. But like, I don't know. I just think watching Saka like against Real Madrid, I'm just like, if I'm Osimhen, I'm like, I want to play with him. Yeah. Like, that's who I want to play with. Him and Odegaard. Like, that's how I want supplying me.
Yeah, I think we all want to see what Arsenal would be like with that sort of striker up front. Let's do it.
Sweet.
Okay,
2-1.
2-1. Going to the final category, which is the £75 million plus. So you can go with whatever price you want for these, and this is going to be a fairly expensive one coming up from me. So on a show that we used to do on Football Daily called Continental Club in April 2022, I suggested this move, and I am coming back to it once again 3 years later. And I still stand by it. And it's Florian Wirtz to replace Kevin De Bruyne at Man City. But back then, he'd played 80 games for Bayer Leverkusen. He'd scored 19 goals. He's gone off like an absolute rocket at that stage. 3 years later, the situation around him has completely changed. He's come back from an ACL injury and has now made 191 appearances for the club, 56 goals and 63 assists in that time, so 0.6 goals and assists per game, which is very similar to what Kevin De Bruyne averages in the Premier League. He obviously came back in, I think he was injured when Xabi Alonso took over, and they were really close to the relegation zone at that time. And I remember reading Xabi Alonso talk about afterwards that the club were like, don't worry, mate, Florian's back soon. And he came back, and I don't think there's been a player that has come back from an ACL injury, at least off the top of my head, that's ever come back so quickly, so effectively, which bodes well for Man City fans also thinking about Rodri. But in his first full season at the club was last year, wins the league, wins the Pokal, gets to the Europa League final, becomes a key player for Germany as well. Musiala and him are very different style of players in many ways. Like Musiala is probably the more comfortable dribbler. I think Florian Wirtz is a better creator, But two unbelievable talents to have at the same time. They've been trading Footballer of the Year awards in the Bundesliga for the last 2 seasons. He had his first year in the Champions League this year. Looked so instantly comfortable at that level as well, despite the fact Xabi Alonso throughout this year has kind of struggled with his team selection maybe slightly. Boniface was set to join Saudi Arabia in January. Patrick Schick has been favoured at different points, so he hasn't necessarily had a striker to work with. And you look around Europe and you're looking for someone to pick up the mantle of the best attacking midfielder of the last 15 years in the Premier League, arguably the best midfielder ever in the Premier League. And Florian Wirtz arrives, and I don't think there's that big a drop-off between Kevin De Bruyne of the last few years and Florian Wirtz. Obviously, Kevin De Bruyne at his absolute peak, 20 Premier League assists in that season, 2-time PFA Player of the Year. Florian Wirtz is probably not instantly right there right now, but who do you back to be able to pick up the mantle of Kevin De Bruyne more effectively in the next 2-3 years? Phil Foden or Florian Wirtz? I'm going Florian Wirtz every single time. The only difficulty with this, and I'm kind of caveating my own suggested transfer, is that he is from Cologne, which is very close to Leverkusen. His parents come to every home match, apparently. There's a World Cup next year with Germany. Does he want to make this huge move a year out from the World Cup, or does he want to wait till 2026 and have one more year at Leverkusen? Because he is still so young, and then move in 2026. I can also imagine that. But then, if you don't join City this summer, City might go massive this summer, and you've kind of missed your opportunity to join Pep Guardiola and Man City and work with Erling Haaland and Gvardiol and, numerous sort of world-class talents all over the pitch. So it's a kind of unique opportunity for Florian Wirtz to make this move. And I think Man City, of all the transfers they could do this summer, whether it's signing another 8-6, whether it's strengthening at centre-back, whether it's signing another more experienced winger, let's say, to replace Jack Grealish or whatever, I think no signing could make more difference than Florian Wirtz.
I do think the Bayern option for him doesn't go away, though. That's the one thing I would say. He might miss out on that opportunity to go to Man City, but how long is Pep going to be there for? I know, I expect them to come back next year, but I don't expect City to have another run like they did under Pep for a while, especially if he does leave in the next 2 years. So whereas Bayern are always going to be the preeminent force in Germany, let's face it, and the option, I just think that Bayern option never goes away. It never does really. I don't think for a top German talent. It just that they're always there in the background.
Could be the next move. I mean, you look at where Leroy Sané was at when he left Man City for Bayern, and most German players, they don't dream of playing for Real Madrid and Barcelona to the same extent as other players in other countries. They dream of playing for Bayern Munich. They are by far the biggest club. They hoover up 75% of all national headlines. And, it is the pinnacle for a German player. But that move to Bayern is happening at any stage of his career. A move to Man City right now, I think, seems almost cleaner and more effective. Because also, when Wirtz and Musiala have dovetailed together for Germany, it hasn't necessarily clicked in the way you'd expect for two such talented players, because they often want to be in the same space. So for me, the easier career move right now is to Man City.
Yeah, a couple of things. Obviously, there is a big story brewing at Man City, which we will find out about in the next month or so, potentially. Obviously, around the financial investigations and things, which is could potentially change the landscape completely. You said they could spend big this summer. They might not be in the Premier League this summer. That's the reality of it. There's a chance they could be expelled from the Premier League, which is just outrageous story and possibility.
What a way to bow out, especially fifth.
So there's always that caveat, but let's just assume that sort of normal service continues. And the move in January was certainly for sort of young players that were going to develop, like Kusanov or Marmouche even, and Victor Rice as well. They brought in, didn't they? So those more, obviously highly rated players, but certainly in the case of Kusanov and Rice, a little bit more under the radar that they think would develop and get better at City. But, they've got the track record, and they go and sign Haaland from the Bundesliga. So they're going to turn down the opportunity to sign Wirtz if they could. And I think it's a great shout. I'd say with De Bruyne leaving, with Foden not on the same level or anywhere near where he should be, or where he was last year, add extra competition in those areas of the pitch. It ticks a lot of boxes. And Wirtz, I think the chance to come to the Premier League is massive. I think it's a big draw. And I think you also got to think that, is Xabi Alonso going to be Leverkusen manager next season? Real Madrid, it's not really going to plan the last couple of weeks. They're dropped off in La Liga. Obviously got an issue with the Champions League tie against Arsenal. Carlo Ancelotti, will be fielding questions about his future again, despite everything he's done for that club. Is it the time now that he goes off to Brazil or somewhere else? And Xabi Alonso would be a front runner. And there was that feeling, obviously, last summer that he wanted to stay, wanted to continue with the project at Leverkusen after that incredible season last year. But again, there was it 9 points off Bayern in the Bundesliga, and again maybe they've just obviously knocked out the Champions League as well by them. Maybe that peak has passed a little bit for Leverkusen of that project, and maybe this is the time where those key assets like Alonso and Wirtz think now's the time to take the next step.
Yeah, I also think Man City haven't replaced their legends very effectively, and I mean their recent legends like Mahrez, Sterling, Sane, further back David Silva. Like they're big money signings in the last few years, whether it's Matheus Nunes, Kovacic coming in, Savio, Doku, and it's very difficult because those standards that they set before were just almost, we'd never seen it before in the Premier League in terms of consistency of dominance. But those players that have come in haven't managed to replicate that so far, and I'm not ruling them out in the future. But Florian Wirtz just feels like a player that would arrive in the Premier League and instantly be one of the best players in the Premier League. There feels like such minimal risk, except for the fact that he's adapting to a new country. But in terms of his technical ability, in terms of his quality, I just see him being instantly one of the top 5 best players in the Prem.
Well, I was going to say he's like a sure thing. One of the top 5 best young players in the world, isn't he? Right? I think that's not a controversial thing to say about him. So, Man City trying to make a statement, trying to get back on track after a disastrous year. And if they're free to spend money, why not spend it on him?
There we have it, Mikey. El Sporting Director getting involved there.
Yeah, sorry.
No, I am up against it here. I think I felt like I was always going to be, because Wirtz, I think he is the most high-profile, big money potential signing this summer. I don't think there's going to be many other players, or if any other players, who are going to be moving for upwards of 80, 90 million pounds, or at least unlikely to. But if there's one player who I think for a huge price could be worth it, I think it's Carlos Baleba at Brighton. Now I know Brighton drive a hard bargain, got that huge money for Caicedo from Chelsea. Liverpool were also interested, but I think they currently value him at £100 million. I think unless they really want to keep hold of him for another year or two, they would have to come down on that this summer, I think, to probably closer to 90 million, right? It's still a lot of money to pay for a central midfielder in this economy. Nevertheless...
is that Trump's economy?
Who knows what clubs... Premier League clubs, they survived the 2008 crash, didn't they, Premier League clubs?
They were going to rein in spending after COVID as well. How did that go?
It just hasn't happened, has it? Yeah. But... I think Carlos Baleba to Liverpool just makes a lot of sense to me. Now, again, Baleba to Liverpool for 90 million or Florian Wirtz to Man City for 90 million, at that price point, like Florian Wirtz, is more befitting of that price tag. But I think for Liverpool to future-proof that midfield and also just to take that midfield up a notch, I think it's worth them spending big. I think Van Dijk is going to sign a new contract this summer. It looks like that's the case. You know, that's all the sounds that he's making. And you know, the other signing that I had in mind before that news was Bastoni to Liverpool, but I just don't think he leaves Inter Milan for Liverpool at this point. And I think Liverpool, I think another opportunity will arise in terms of a centre-back, even if they were to get someone like Mark Guehi in to future-proof that back line for a bit less money. But I think Baleba, you talk about Florian Wirtz being one of the top 5 players in the Premier League when he comes in. I think Baleba's well on his way to becoming one of the top 4 or 5 central midfielders in the Premier League. He's already proven at Brighton. We saw that Liverpool were willing to spend upwards of 100 million on Caicedo. They would have done it if Chelsea hadn't swooped in there at the last minute. And he's just got so much to his game. He's so good at taking the ball on the turn. He loves that pinged, looping ball over the top for the striker. I think that adds another dimension to this Liverpool team, especially when Trent Alexander-Arnold's on his way to Madrid, who's providing those balls from deep. I know Van Dijk has done it a lot in the past, but you can't rely on him. I think that's something that Gravenberch, in terms of his ball progression and his passing, is great at, but I don't think you can rely on him defensively as much. Alexis McAllister has had to pick up so much slack this season. And, at the start of this season, when, the Zubimendi deal looked like it was, getting over the line, that felt like the solution, didn't it? It was like Liverpool, it felt like Liverpool, that was where they needed the most reinforcement. They didn't get it, and somehow they're winning the Premier League despite not getting it. But Gravenberch and McAllister have just been run into the ground. They really have. And I think Baleba, along with Adam Wharton, I think, they're 2 of the best young midfield options in the entirety of Europe, let alone the Premier League at the moment. And I think Baleba, just his ability to drive the ball upfield, his defensive numbers are amazing. In a Brighton team that have, adapted so well under Hertzler. I just think he'd fit into that Liverpool team so well.
Yeah, he's a good player, isn't he? I think he's one of those players that when he's not there, you really notice it for Brighton. He gives them so much security in that midfield as well.
And he's got so much leadership for a player so young as well.
A young player, yeah. We were covering a game a few weeks ago where he was getting in the box regularly as well. He was so despairing at the end of the game because he hadn't got his goal, but he's got that asset to his game as well where he can get forwards. Yeah,
Great strike from range.
Yeah. Well, I would question though whether he's in that sort of price bracket that we saw Caicedo and McAllister get into while they were at Brighton. I still don't think there's like the hype around it as much, and I think I probably are getting to a situation where with like a club like Liverpool, if they're going to be spending that much money, okay, they've got a little bit more room to spend, I think, than the likes of, say, Man United or someone like that. But I still think those owners, they want every penny out of the pounds that they spend in terms of the quality of player they bring in terms of the impact they have. I think that number 6 is, I agree that, Gravenberch has been brilliant this year, but definitely needs support in there in terms of another option. And it's not going to be Endo. And it doesn't look like it's going to be Zubimendi either. No. But obviously they do want that sort of player in there. But yeah, I would just question whether it's Baleba at this time in terms of putting that much money down on the table for him. I know Brighton have obviously got a track record of cashing in on those sort of deals and making huge profits on those sort of deals, and they've definitely unearthed another good player in him. But yeah, I feel like you'd probably still want to see another season of him in the Premier League doing those things for Brighton, maybe in a European season as well for them next year if they do finish in those places. I think Wirtz would be an easier sell to my fan base than Baleba at this point in time.
Okay, it's finished 2-2, guys. But did you agree with Pete, Sporting Director's decisions? Let us know in the comments section. Guys, thank you so much for watching the Lowdown for another week. Pete, if they want to read or listen to some of your stuff, where can they find it?
Twitter, Instagram, TikTok.
Yes.
P Smith XI11.
Love it. Go check
it out. Yeah.
Go check out Mike here, go check out our socials as well. There we go. Nearly a pretty good show. But thanks so much for watching, guys. We'll catch you next week. Bye-bye.